Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was Justice League's Fire Shadow. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Gotham Airport. A large plane was now making its way to land on the runway at the Gotham City Airport, and just as it was releasing its landing gear, out came a figure holding to one of the tires, and soon landed outside of the field near the runway. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze dusted himself off and soon got on his way to get away from the authorities, and go see the rest of the city. He was still wearing his usual gear as he hit and quickly changed his looks with hair dye color and henge. He also made sure to check his laptop and UPS drives, and was pleased to see that they were all working nicely. Once that was done, he moved past the airport's field, leaped over the fences, and moved towards the city. Moving into Gotham City in the closing hours of the afternoon was already giving the city something of a gothic look, and he could not help but feel a bit spooked out by it. He had read the files on the city, and while it had its fair share of fun places and things to do, the criminal elements in the city were literally flowing around like water. And a number of the said criminals were all crazy and completely unlike anything he had dealt with back in law. One such foe was known as the Riddler, who seemed to enjoy making all these wacky but deadly word puzzles that usually drove the people who were his victims. He had no plans on mincing words with a guy like him, since he was in no mood for wasting time on some crazy and lethal scheme. He placed those thoughts aside as he moved into the city. The first thing he did was go to a nearby cafe, and decided to grab some food and some drink. As he sat down, he decided to check out the news, which was thankfully being played on a nearby TV set. In the current news today, billionaire Bruce Wayne will be attending a special charity ball for the Gotham City Police Department Veterans Fund. This has been Bruce's second appearance in the ball, and has shown his support for the Gotham PD. Naruto looked at this man named Bruce Wayne, and he could see that he was all smiles and working hard in front of the camera. He had a feeling that this guy was hiding something, a pain of some sort, but he decided that it was not his business since, despite playing what he suspected was a role, Bruce was very genuine in his actions when he presented an award to the police officers who were there on the stage. For now, however, Naruto's concern was on what else was in the news. And it was not going to be long before the news turned to something that he felt as a lot more important to listen to. In other news today, the criminal known as the Penguin has been transferred once more to Arkham Asylum, following his latest attempt to steal a number of priceless relics from a recent excavation in South America, what were being stored in the Gotham Museum. The former socialite turned criminal was foiled by Batman and Robin during his attempt, and while it had been a difficult chase, he and his henchmen were apprehended and locked up by the two, as well as preventing damage to the relics. Images of the criminal in question actually made Naruto raise an eyebrow. This guy was nowhere near as freaky as that Akatsuki swordsman named Kasame, or that snake-summoning bastard Orochimaru. And that zombie bounty hunter of Akatsuki who was the victim of his prototype Rasen Shuriken decades ago. But this penguin guy certainly looked like the flightless bird he read about in the internet, and at the library he at times went to just to keep himself informed, and like the ones he had seen near the land of Snow Spring. But unlike said birds that he found to be funny and at times cute, this guy was downright creepy, and also looked like someone who not only needed to be on a diet, but needed to spend a whole life sentence on a deserted island and away from the populace. There's an idea, maybe I should to the Hirshin technique and take all the bad guys to an island way off the map, and let them figure out just how they are going to survive. But despite how tempting the idea was, he decided to place it aside for now, since that was no doubt going to be a problem. The methods in which this world dealt with criminals confused him at times, since in his reality, criminals were usually divided into two categories with different punishments. The civilian criminals back in his world were usually dealt in a fashion by the Kage, and were punished depending on the severity of their crimes. Though that was only in the hidden villages, and those who were not part of the hidden villages were dealt with by those who were placed into positions of power by the feudal lords, and by civilian officials. The other category of criminals were the missing nin, who were quickly placed on the bingo book. This book was the source of information on renegade ninja, and just what were their crimes and the bounties that were placed on them by the officials. Of course, the bingo book was different for each land, and while there were criminals listed there were also enemy ninjas who had done things to warrant them being placed in the bingo book. And usually ninja who encountered ninjas who were listed in said bingo book would be given the authority to take them down, either for capture or kill. But that was not recommended for ninja who were high-ranked. S-rank ninja in the bingo book were to be engaged with extreme caution. A large number of highly skilled ninja were assembled, or when the ninja pursuing said target was an S-rank ninja as well. Naruto decided not to delve into that any further, as he decided to go and finish his food and drink. Once his food was there before him, he went to work and enjoyed his food as best he could. He would have gone for ramen, but this was good enough, and besides, he had no idea if there was a ramen stand anywhere in the city. hence the need for him to get a map and explore the city soon. He also kept his senses alert on the chance that some nut might decide to try and rob the place. The last thing he wanted was a replay of his time in that place in law. Thankfully, it seemed that the majority of criminals that called Gotham their home had other ideas or had bigger fish to fry. As soon as he was done and paid his bill, he moved out to find a place to call home, though he had an idea that he was willing to try just to make sure that he did not get into trouble. He decided to find a nice place to call his base of operations and get there to do some work on what he was going to do in Gotham, but he had a feeling that sooner or later, he was going to meet some very interesting people. But before all of that, he needed to get some shut-eye, tour the city a bit, and when he got a map, go out and do some aggressive recon. Not to mention do some shopping to buy some new supplies and equipment with his money that he might be in need of in the future. Back in Metropolis, Clark Kent normally was very calm and level-headed, but today he was a bit tense, or rather more than tense, trying patient. As much as he was relieved that no one on the planet had gotten a tip about his identity, or anyone in the other news and gossip agencies, that did not make him feel any better. The Hokage had pretty much faded away from the scene, as he had only made very few appearances in Metropolis before being gone for at least 2 weeks. Harry had been trying to find leads since he was curious as to who this hero was, and why was it he was moving about the world when he should be in law. Clark was happy that his identity was not exposed, but that did not mean that the discovery that someone else apart from his family and Batman Bruce knew he was Superman was not easy to deal with. Kara was insistent that they find the Hokage and get some details straight, and find out just how he found out his identity. And she had good reasons, but so far, the man was off the radar, and not a single sighting of him had been made. Most would have thought that the Hokage had gone back to law, but there was no sighting of him there either, so that meant that he was still moving around. "Where are you, Hokage?" Clark was tempted to go to Bruce and see if he had possibly heard of this Hokage, since he knew Bruce would want to keep an eye on matters that were of concern. But he decided against it since there had been no mention of the Hokage in Gotham, and if he was there, Bruce would have informed him, even more so since Bruce would not be the kind to let someone just appear in his city. For now he was busy with his life as Clark Kent, and he intended to keep it that way. But the best he could hope for was a chance to learn more about the mysterious Hokage, and how he had learned about his true identity. And if possible, hear about any new happenings that can be linked to the blonde masked figure who had deduced his identity. 2 days later, Naruto was in his combat clothing and was now moving over the buildings as he ran over the rooftops of the city. The shinobi could not help but admit that the city was filled to the brim with activity, most of the time the nightlife or the negative kind. But he was keen to see just what the city was going to be like and possibly run into any of the criminals. As he got over another building, he began to run up the nearby wall and got to the top and scanned the city. He looked around his current location and then sat down on the cross-legged position and began to summon the natural energy, and found to his slight disgust that the energy here in the city was more than a bit tainted. Industry normally did not bother the natural flow of energy, but the ninja noted that heavily industrialized cities had a tendency to taint the natural energy in and around their area. But he placed that out of the side, since now was not the time for him to think about the mess. He was in Senjutsu mode in a mere moment and began to scan the chakra signatures in the city. There were a lot of them and it was going to be a bit before he sorted them out, and he decided to get on the move and see just what and possibly who he was going to see. He moved over some of the buildings, and soon he spotted the flashing or lights that were red and blue, the universal color of the police in his experience. And judging by the number of said lights, this meant that something was going down, and he had a feeling that he might meet Batman or possibly some of the more colorful criminals. He had managed to get a dossier of the criminals that called this Gothic city home. Though what Gothic meant he had absolutely no clue. His files on the criminals that called this place home had some very interesting people. One was a man going by the name of Bane. The guy who apparently was one heck of a bodybuilder and had a serious use for a drug called Venom. Seeing an image of that guy had him thinking about all the muscle-bound ninja he had fought before, who despite their size, sometimes had some wicked speed. Apparently he was also rather smart, a deadly mix of brawn and brains, though he was supposedly a mercenary assassin. Naruto had little liking for that kind since despite his people being trained as assassins, they only got to that stage if they were contracted to kill someone who was very important or too dangerous, and they usually were allied to the village. Mercenaries were looked down on by a good number of loyal ninja, since they were highly untrustworthy, and certainly not someone one worked with, unless they had some very steep pockets. Even the samurai in the Land of Iron hated them, and those of their group who did turn rogue and become mercenaries were treated even worse. Still, fighting the guy was going to be promising. The other guy was a man who went by the name of Joker. A deranged madman who dressed in the worst getup Naruto had ever seen. Guy who wears makeup, and also clothes of green and purple as well as acting like a super creepy version of Orochimaru. What kind of sick nut acts like that and dresses like that in public? Still, this guy certainly had brains to mix with the craziness, having held Gotham for ransom more than once, and had really given a lot of the police headaches in trying to deal with him. And the way this guy treated his victims filled the former Hokage with a great deal of disgust, and that was something since Naruto usually tried to change people, with the marked exception of those who are truly irredeemable. If he was given a chance, he would silence the bastard personally, but for now he was going to let Batman deal with the nut. There were others, but these two were certainly interesting. The first was Selina Kyle, who was a very attractive blonde woman who could easily turn heads and make most men who had little control over themselves think less than gentle thoughts. He however could tell that she was not just a luscious figure and a pretty face, she was known as Catwoman, a thief who certainly had the looks to suit the name. She was a woman who advocated the protection of animals, namely cats, and before she had been arrested, had been a high roller in Gotham society, and courted by a lot of guys, one of them being said playboy Bruce Wayne. She was apparently caught by Batman, and despite being a thief, she seemed to be willing to fight other criminals, as she had tangled a terrorist group with Batman, that eventually led to her being captured by said man. All because she wanted to stop them from taking land that was to be a nature preserve. And while she was released on probation for stopping said terrorists, there was no doubt in Naruto's mind that this was one woman he disliked the idea of being kept locked away. Even if he had only done some preliminary research on her, his time in being a Hokage and his years of experience told him that she was possibly getting frustrated at not being allowed to live the way she wanted to live. And that was something he could relate to, since he had always been placed in a situation where he could not be himself. Still, stealing was stealing and considered to be a crime in this reality as well as his own, though if she stole from corrupt and foolish criminal bosses and high society people, then he was not going to stop her in any way, shape or form. Only when she harmed others who were not even part of the problem would he stop her if he met her. The next person was a certain woman who had one heck of an unhealthy obsession with plants, and had the more than fitted name of Poison Ivy. The woman was named Dr. Pamela Isley, and was rumored to have been one heck of a botanist in her day, and cared a great deal for nature. She apparently had been involved in some form of accident that somehow gave her the ability to command plants, release some form of pheromone that could arouse people, and create poisons of a sort in her own body. The one thing that he did not like was said accident supposedly made her unable to have kids, which as far as he knew was a fate most women would have considered worse than death. Still, the woman was undeniably attractive, especially with that getup she usually wore when she did her work. Now that is one heck of a killer babe with a green thumb. Poison Ivy had more than her fair shares of being stopped by Batman, and had been locked up in a place called Arkham Asylum. This place was some sort of hospital and holding center for the criminally insane and dangerous. In his mind, the nuts he dealt with would have felt right at home there, Toby and Kabuto included. The difference was with this green-loving babe was the fact that unlike the other loons and scum, she had no interest in money, and usually did her actions to attack people who had committed actions that were attacks on nature, at least to her perspective. And when the word attack was used, that included using lethal force, either with her poisons or her pet plants. She was also rumored to be friends with one criminal woman going by the name of Harley Quinn. But so far he had no idea who she was at the moment, so that was going to be placed aside for the time being, as he saw that there was some activity at the other side of the city. He spotted a figure moving through the shadows, and since Batman was recorded to have a cape, this was not Batman as he did not see a cape. He moved quickly and quietly as best he could while keeping to the shadows to make sure that he did not alert his quarry. Once he was close enough, he spotted the figure break into a nearby tower, which looked like it belonged to some very rich fellow. And when he managed to get a glimpse of his target once the figure came back out, he could not help but grin behind his mask. Hello. At said tower. Selina sighed as she took the jewels and placed in her sachet. She had half expected Batman to show up again to stop her, but with Bane causing havoc alongside Riddler as she had heard on the police band wave, the chances of that happening were slim. And despite the fact she knew that she was skirting the limits of her probation from being Catwoman, this was one chance she was not going to let go. Besides, the necklace belonged to a businessman who she knew made his money over the trade of tiger skins, so double impact for her. The beautiful cat burglar patted the bag and spoke with a measure of relief, as she knew that she was in the clear. Looks like I'm finally getting away scot-free tonight. That was when another voice came on the scene behind Selina. You might want to rethink that statement, miss. Catwoman turned, and there behind her was a man dressed in an outfit of orange and black, like a ninja, and wearing a black short-sleeved trench coat with red flames on it. The guy wore a mask and some form of headband with a metal plate on the front, and had a strange leaf-like symbol on it. She raised an eyebrow since the man was actually standing on a nearby pole upside down. And she could tell that there was nothing holding him on said pole, which made her all the more curious, and while she knew the saying curiosity killed the cat, she knew cats had 9 lives as a saying too. Naruto grinned again behind his mask as he got a very good look at Selina Kyle and spoke once more. Considering the getup you have, I can wager a safe bet you Catwoman. And I can easily say the name does you justice. Selena was curious who this guy was, as this was definitely not Batman, and most certainly not Robin or that one named Nightwing, and decided to speak next. "And who are you?" "I'm the Hokage, and before you ask why I am here, I'm taking a tour of the city, just to see what this place is like. And as far as I can see, the nightlife is pretty exciting, and despite the fact I am upside down, the view before me is certainly nice." Selena could easily see this guy was actually flirting with her, a surprise since that did not happen often. Usually it was her who did the flirting, though only to distract people such as Batman when she felt it was better to flee than stay. She decided to smile back and watch as the man moved away from the pole, walking on it, and then moving to flip and land on the ledge like a skilled acrobat. That made Selena raise an eyebrow, as that was rather interesting and, despite herself, somewhat impressive. "Are you flirting with me, Hokage? I thought heroes like you usually waste no time catching crooks like me." Naruto mentally snickered at that and replied, "That's true, and I do plan to try and convince you to give those jewels back, but that does not mean I can't enjoy the company, right?" Selena raised an eyebrow at this guy. He was actually flirting with her, and maybe that could be his weakness. If he was easily attracted to her, then she might be able to play him. She smiled and beckoned to him with a finger. Naruto decided to do it, and as he was close, she spoke to him, while reaching for her whip. "Sure, but you should know something about cats, Hokage." "And what is that?" "We have sharp claws." Selena slashed at Naruto, and Naruto reeled back as she then attacked him with several attacks, managing to hit his mask and crack it, forcing him back until he moved away. That she felt the distance would do, and she quickly moved with her whip and left the scene. She moved as quickly as she can, unaware that Naruto was not dissuaded, but he merely grinned and soon reached for a special kunai of his. As soon as she had some distance from the man on a rooftop and was near a tall wall on said roof, she looked back and saw that he was not following her. She sighed and spoke to herself. "He's not bad looking body-wise, but he's no Batman, and did not even try to catch me." But she got a surprise when she turned and was face to face with Naruto, who quickly moved forward until she hit the wall behind her, and the mask fell off, revealing his face. Selena saw herself looking at a young but definitely handsome-looking blonde with blue eyes that had a Lupin quality. There were several whisker-like marks on his cheeks that added to the look, and his toothy grin revealed slightly sharper than normal canines. That made her feel some surprise, as she had not expected that, and despite the fact that his face was revealed, the Hokage did not seem to be troubled at all. Naruto then spoke to her. "Nice try, little cat, but I also go by another name, and that is Fox, and foxes like me are very cunning, and we're damn persistent when we chase something. So, are we going to the part where we fight for real, or where you give up the jewels, or you can try another way of making me lower my guard, and get away with said jewels? All three sound really nice to me, though the third option might be more fun." Naruto then sniffed a bit and grinned more as he spoke. "Nice perfume, by the way, certainly suits you, even more so with the sweat mixed in, Catwoman, so what's it going to be?" That sent shivers up Selena's spine, even though she could not know why, or she thought she did, as this was the first time a man was this aggressive with her when it came flirting, as Batman was the impassive type. But she was not going to let this chance to escape again slip. How this guy managed to get past her and be there was a mystery, but that had to wait. She gave him a grin and spoke once more while moving to press her hands on his chest. "You're pretty good there, Hokage, but aren't you worried that I know what you look like without your mask?" Naruto did not seem fazed by that and replied, "Don't think I don't know your real name, Catwoman, or better yet, Miss Selena Kyle. I might look like a kid, but I assure you, I am no simple idiot. Besides, all it takes is for you to be revealed to have gone back to being Catwoman, and they lock you away for a long time and throw away the key. So, how are we going to play this?" Selena managed to smile, yet she was not the least bit happy that she had been found out by this guy. Everyone who was in the know already knew that she was Catwoman, but she was still hoping to do this to live the way she wanted to live without anyone figuring out. But this guy had just caught her, and now she was in trouble unless she could convince him to let her go and forget that they ever met. "You tell me, Hokage, you certainly know who I am, so you have me at a disadvantage." She ran her hand on his chest and then moved to his face, which despite her self-control, she found to be well-formed and hardened, like Batman's, and she could not help but reach for the face as well. The marks on his cheeks made her wonder if it was merely tattoos, or these were possibly inherited. Naruto grinned even more as Selena was doing her best to lay on the charm, and she was really going for it as it was. But he was already making his move while Selena was laying on the charm, and decided to let this little cat and mouse, or rather cat and fox game come to an end, but not before seeing just how far he could take it. "I know, so tell you what, why don't we try a competition?" "Oh? Yep, here's how it's going to be. You try to rob a different place in 3 days without getting caught by Batman and the cops, but avoid me finding you. If I find you, try to evade me quickly and get to Pier number 19 in Gotham Harbor, and avoid having me switch your loot with something else harmless but worthless to you, while you try to fight or evade me. If you can do 3 times in a row, then you win, and I will not bother you again, nor will I stop you from what you love doing." Selena raised an eyebrow at that and replied, "Really? Care to tell me why, Hokage? Naruto grinned, and then to Selena's slight shock, the man touched her lips and her chin with his fingers, and spoke with a very husky tone into her right ear. Way I see it, Miss Kyle, you're not a full-time villain. You don't kill, sell drugs, weapons, or people, kidnap and all those other things criminals do. You only rob people, and that usually pertains to corrupt petty people who do something that offends you, and even if you do rob them, you don't kill unless you have no choice. And you also happen to have a kindness towards animals. If what I read about you is right on the money when it concerns wildlife, namely cats. Plus you did save this city from a terrorist attack, and that wins points in my book. The only time I might take offense to your passion for being the seductive thief that you are, is when you rob the hard-working, industrious, and actually respectable people in this city. You live your life the way you want freedom and the chance to be yourself. I can respect that easily, since I want to have freedom too in my own way, and not be forced by others to live the way they want me to live. In that sense, you can say that in some fashion, you and I are a bit similar, though I am no thief like you. If you want to keep doing this without being found out, try to keep up with me here, Catwoman. Selena had to admit that this was the first time she met someone who understood her lifestyle and her wants. However, she was still going to be very wary of him, since she knew that going in without seeing all the angles was a bad idea from the beginning. And if you win, what then? Naruto then grabbed her by the hips with one hand, much to her surprise, though she hid it well, and spoke once more, as he touched her chin again with the other. If I win the first day, then I get to see your face. Sure, I've seen the pictures, but images don't do justice to seeing the face in the flesh, so to speak. Besides, it's only fair since you've seen my face already. And what happens on the second day if you win, Hokage? Naruto enjoyed that as he rubbed his left hand on her hip slowly before speaking. Simple, I ask you out on a date, and I'm paying. That made Selena raise an eyebrow, as that was something she did not expect. You want to ask me out on a date? Of course, a date, a simple lunch and dinner date, and I am paying this time with my own money. There's nothing in your files that say you can't have a social life, right? And no, I am not going to take you to bed or anything like that. I just want to know you and why you chose this life. Since we're both in this case on opposing sides of a spectrum, I am just curious. And besides, I happen to have a high respect for women, so the only time I would take you to bed is if you allow me to, and only if you and I have enough time to know one another. You can always go home afterwards and I won't stalk you, just a willing man and woman on a social get-together. Come in the last day. Naruto laughed a bit and switched places with Selena as he was now on the wall, but this time he had both hands on his hips and moved them to her back. That made Selena take in a brief gasp of air as she looked at the man who was flirting with her in a very aggressive fashion. That's when I asked you to pose for a few pictures. That got Selena's attention, and in a not so good way, as she looked at him hard and with a frown on her face. What did you say? Naruto laughed gently and replied. Not in that way, though a guy can certainly dream about it. No, just some pictures in a set of clothes that you can feel comfortable with. Knowing your social standing before you got busted as Catwoman by a certain tall, dark and brooding dude with a rather creepy attachment to flying mammals, you're bound to have a few dresses here and there. I would be lying though if I said that I don't like to see you in a swimsuit. One or two pieces up to you, though I recommend black, since you would obviously look good in it. After that, I will pretty much leave you alone for the rest of the time I am here in Gotham, which might not be for very long anyway. And if I refuse, then you reveal to them that I was being Catwoman again, right? Pretty much so, balls in your court, Catwoman. Selena decided to make her move as she smiled at the Hokage, and moved to kiss him, as she spoke to his lips, while running her hands on his body again. You drive a hard game, but tell me, do you really think that you can win this competition? I caught you off guard, didn't I? Perhaps, but a cat always manages to escape, and this time so will I. With that, she quickly pushed him back and took out a small number of smoke pellets, and tossed it at Naruto. The smoke was blinding, but she quickly turned away and escaped. Or so she thought, as when she left the building, Naruto merely blew the smoke away with a blast of chakra-enhanced wind, and moved to see Catwoman on the move yet again, but enjoyed the sight of her retreating form, and whistled appreciatively at the view before turning around. He was going to let her go for now. After all, this was merely the foreplay, and he had something to return as well. Later. Selena sighed a bit as she looked around, hoping that it was all over, and she could finally get away with her prize. That Hokage guy, however, did not make it the least bit easy for her, as that was certainly something she had not readied herself for. The guy was both aggressive and rather forward, as he had actually responded with placing his hands on her hips, and even had the audacity to touch her back. Plus that competition he had in mind. Get a grip, Selena, time to go, you've got the jewels. So. The blonde thief was shocked when she checked her sachet, and found that instead of the jewels she took, there was a stuffed frog doll in her pack, and it had a letter in the chest. She took it off and saw that it was a message. Nice try, but better luck next time, and just so you know, this was a dry run. The real competition starts next week, or in this case, at least 4 days from now, so better shape up and get the rest of your joints okay. Because you are about to get a heck of a workout. P.S. I'm sending the jewels back, and I will alert security this time, so feel free to come and get them if you want. Kiro. Selena turned and shook her head in slight anger and slight amusement, all this time when she thought she finally had the advantage. That kid had actually switched the jewels with this plush toy, and she had thought that her actions had finally worked in letting her get away. But instead she was the one who got robbed, and despite her anger at what happened, she had to give the young man credit for the slip. She turned to see that there was no sign of the Hokage anywhere, meaning that he had escaped, and that meant that the competition was on between them. I am so not going to lose to you, young man. A day later. Naruto cracked a grin as he read the latest bit of news. Apparently the reason Batman was not around to catch Catwoman was he was dealing with Bane and Riddler. How those two managed to get themselves working together, he would never know, but he did not mind, and while Kurama had expressed a level of interest in fighting this Bane character, he turned down that idea. The thought of breaking into Arkham and being around all those loons and nutjobs just to find one supped-up criminal and fight him for the entertainment value was not in his mind right now. At the moment, he was currently on his way to grab some takeout food from where he was staying. The chance to bring a good meal into his guts was welcome, but he was annoyed by the fact that he could not find a decent ramen restaurant anywhere. The Gothamites, as they were called, seemed to be fairly interesting in his mind, and he was pleased to see that despite the fact that their city did not have a very stellar reputation due to the crime rates, they were proud of their home. Kurama, however, had a less than stellar liking for the city as he spoke. This place is one of the strangest cities thus far. I suppose so. Anyway, we should get ready for another interesting night. Hope we can run into more company in the city. HMPH, I hope that we can finally see just what this Batman is capable of. Anyway, are you sure that you did the right thing in letting that very attractive woman go like that last night? You mean Selena Kyle, right? Yeah, I mean seriously, Naruto, she was fine, and certainly looks good in the clothes, not like the women in your past, but certainly comes close. For all you know, both of you could have made quite a set, not to mention the fact that she would have been one heck of a lady in the sack. I swear you sound like the pervy sage. And that's supposed to be a bad thing. Considering the fact that you yourself are quite the pervert and don't bother denying it because we both know it's true. Besides, if you decide to go for it, your experiences when it comes to the bedroom might really make her happy. She might very well join you willingly, since you don't happen to be so uptight with the law and all. Ha! Yeah, well, no sense crying over spilled milk, as they say. Besides, we've got another week before we leave this place. And besides, that encounter is going to give me a lot of data to make the next novel. Kurama snorted a bit and replied before going to sleep. Yeah, well, novels and books don't come close to doing the real thing with a woman, or more than one woman, as you already know. Naruto could not help but agree to the truth in Kurama's words. Nothing beat actually doing with it a willing woman, or in his case, more than one willing woman. Then again, even after being married, his former sensei Kakashi never got rid of the books, and AM certainly didn't mind. He was willing to wager a guess that Kakashi used the books that Jiraiya made to spice up his love life with AM. The blonde placed the thoughts aside as he ate his food, and then headed back to his hideout to get some work done. The blonde shinobi was more than willing to get a chance to meet any other new figures in Gotham, though he was hoping to see if he was going to meet Batman and his crew, to see just what this guy was about. Once he got to the hideout, he began to work and also planned something on the off chance he was discovered. Later that night, Naruto was currently using his Senjutsu chakra once more as he was on the highest tower in Gotham, while balancing himself on a thin sheet of marble on the tip of the tower. This allowed him to scan the city section by section, since that was needed, due to the nature of the flow of natural energy in the place. He was looking forward to the chance to have that competition with Selena Kyle, since she was good, and a test of skill was something he did look forward to. Of course, Kurama had other ideas at the time, and he could not help but shake his head at some of the suggestions his demonic resident and still slightly reluctant partner had towards the woman. It would have been a lie though that he did not find those same suggestions very interesting, and he had to keep those from conjuring perverted ideas into his head. But for now, he was going to indulge them at a later date, since he now had to go and see if he could find out what was going on in the city. He soon got up and fired a chakra chain to move to the next building below, and as soon as he swung away, he headed from building to building. That was when he spotted someone, or rather 3 people, moving over the rooftops. That piqued Naruto's interest as he began to move in the shadows, while making sure to keep the 3 on sight. He moved close enough to finally see them and he grinned. Well, now if it isn't the Batman himself, certainly looks the part in the name, and that must be his accomplices. He moved ever closer to see both Robin and Batgirl. He had read the data that he could find, and knew that both Robin and Batgirl were accomplished fighters and were part of the team. Though there was another named Nightwing, he had not seen that guy as of yet, but decided to shelve that thought aside for now as he kept watch on the 3. All the while making sure to be silent and still, not an easy thing for him considering his personality, but he had learned enough to get by. So far Batman did not react, and when he used his Senjutsu senses, he could tell that they had not found him yet. Once they were clear, the blonde shinobi followed them at they reached a warehouse which appeared to be occupied. He wagered a guess that the people who were there were not the law-abiding kind. And as he moved through the shadows behind Batman and his group, he was able to see them in action. He saw how Batman fought, and the taijutsu stance that the man was using was more than enough to tell him that Batman was well trained. The way the guy moved spoke of intense training and discipline as well as years of experience. He did not try to just power through a foe. He was intelligent, patient, cunning, and also agile, despite the build the guy had. Naruto nodded in approval as Batman continued to fight several of the crooks attacking him, as he switched his attention to the others. Robin appeared to be less disciplined, yet was unpredictable in his attack style, so that told Naruto that the young man had some street fighting background to him, though tempered no doubt by his boss's training methods and tactics. But Naruto did notice that the guy was a bit too overzealous and a bit too forceful as well in his attacks. The guy could recover well enough, but that action still left him vulnerable to counterattack, as one of the thugs managed to get close enough to grab him in a bear hug from behind. Robin managed to free himself and knock the guy down, but Naruto could tell that he was still going to be needing improvement. As for Batgirl, Naruto had to give her credit for the look as well as her fighting skills. Apparently she had been trained well in taijutsu, and no doubt had prior training in self-defense, before being the costume fighter that she was. And considering the way the various criminal elements that called this city home, he was hardly surprised by the fact that she had to defend herself on a regular basis. He watched them fight the thugs, and he could tell that they were more than experienced in fighting side by side and alone, though he could guess that Batman was the more seasoned of the whole group, being the senior. In this case, Batman was like a Jonin, and the two were either Genin or Chunin had they been born in his world. It was there and then that he sensed something was about to happen, and he decided that now was the time to go in and make a move of his own. Barbara was not going to like this, as she managed to knock down the thug while fighting alongside Batman and Robin, who were also dealing with their own foes. The smuggling ring they had busted up happened to be well armed, and while some of them had been taken out by her and the others, the rest were putting up a heck of a fight. Unknown to her, however, one of the thugs had snuck up to a crane that was carrying a number of crates, and then caught at the net with a knife. Robin spotted him and quickly tossed one of his Robin-themed boomerangs at the man. It was enough to knock the guy out, but the now weakened net tore up and down came the crates. Batman saw that too and shouted to Barbara, "Batgirl, move." Barbara looked up and her eyes widened at the sight as she saw the crates coming down. She tried to move, but the shock had temporarily stopped her from reaching for her grappling gun or to move away. However, she was not going to be lost under the crates or killed, as a certain someone made his very own move to help her from her predicament. The last thing she saw was large amount of smoke, and then she was being held bridal style in someone's arms. She looked to see herself looking at a face covered by a mask that had a fox-like appearance, and a metal plate on the forehead area with a strange leaf-like symbol in the middle. Barbara was quite shocked by this and heard the massive crash, turned, and to her surprise, she was at least 3 stories up where the crates could have crushed her into nothing but pulp. She looked back at the figure and managed to find her voice and spoke. "Ah, thanks. No problem, miss, hold on." That was her only warning as the guy leaped from the beams and began to move down, and as soon as they landed, another thug charged, but the new arrival quickly reacted by leaping forward with her still in his arms, and smashed a kick into the face, sending the guy down, and placing her to the floor. He then turned and to her surprise, took out what appeared to be ninja throwing stars, and tossed them at the next attacker who was armed with a pipe. That managed to stop him and pin him to the wall. Another attacker came and she turned to fight back, only for the mass being to move and block the incoming crowbar, with what appeared to be some sort of diamond-shaped metallic knife. She then saw it actually shimmer a bit, and the crowbar was suddenly cut as her rescuer then unleashed a powerful sidekick that sent the man flying to the side. And right into a number of crates, showing that this fellow with the fox mask was a lot stronger than he actually looked. All of that was in the span of a few seconds as well, and it was not long before the smuggler thugs were down and out. It was here that Batman was accompanied by Robin and was now before the masked ninja. Barbara was soon moving to the side and was with Batman and Robin. Naruto could already see that he was now being assessed by Batman. This guy was very good, and after what he had seen, he could easily tell that Batman had been trained extensively in taijutsu and ninjutsu. Though he doubted that this world's version ninjas had the same level of ability as the ninjas of his world. He also had no doubt that Batman was going to come in hard on him and try to get some answers out of him when he saw a chance. And he was right as Batman spoke. "You're the Hokage." Naruto tried to lighten the mood, though he had a feeling that the guy in black was not going to rise to the bait as it were. "But guess Batman, shame I can't give you reward for the guess. You willing to take an IOU?" Robin and Batgirl were surprised by the way the guy was talking to Bruce. It was as if he was not bothered by the fact that Bruce was giving him the 3rd degree. Bruce himself was not amused and sternly glared at the man before him. Still, he noted that despite the attitude, the Hokage was also watching him intently. The body language did not give anything away, and that alone was telling to him, as the only way someone could do that was when the person was very well trained and experienced. Whoever this Hokage was, there was no doubt in Bruce's mind that he was someone who merely dressed up as a ninja. And the way he used the ninja stars and that knife told Bruce that this guy was a veteran fighter with some serious strength and stamina. But right now, he was in the mood to get some answers. What are you doing here in Gotham? Just passing through. I ain't here to steal your thunder or that of your running partners. I was just cruising along the area when I saw what was going down, and decided to observe the whole thing. Only decided to get involved with the whole thing when your lady partner was about to be turned into a mess on the floor. That got Bruce's attention as that meant that the whole time he, Barbara, and Tim were fighting, this guy had been watching them. He had trained himself to have a very high level of situational awareness, and his years of training and experience only made it stronger. To know that this guy had been here the whole time and had not gotten his attention was enough to tell him that this guy was very well trained and possibly experienced to a level that was above normal. Whoever trained him was good. But that still does not mean that I am going to let him go scot-free. Really? I saw the news when you showed up in Law and then in Metropolis, and I can tell that you are no ordinary person. Naruto decided to try an experiment and spoke seriously in Japanese. He had a feeling that if Batman had been trained by a ninja master, then knowing the language was going to be second nature to him. You have no idea how different I am, Batman, but I can bet that as you were trained by a ninja master, you already guessed that, didn't you? And sure enough, Batman did not disappoint Naruto as he responded in Japanese. It didn't. The way you fought and moved tell me you are no mere kid. You were trained not by some simple martial artist, but a top-ranked assassin, and no doubt you had other teachers as well. You also showed that you have strong combat experience and reflexes. Only way you could earn that level of skill is not just through training alone, but by being placed in situations that demanded skill and innovation. And because of that, I can bet that you have been doing those things for years, until you can do it without conscious thought. Naruto grinned at that and replied, "Good, you're as every bit as skilled as I read in the news, Batman, and I can tell that you train your two companions personally, though I can bet that they still have a long way to go to reach your level. Your master was no doubt a very good man, and someone you respected a great deal and was a good influence to you. Now the question in my mind is what you are going to do now with me. It should be obvious that I have to make sure that you are not a threat in disguise. I don't trust you one bit, Hokage. You really need to loosen up, you know. Considering what you know about me already, do you really think that I am going to go with you quietly? I ain't got any issue with you, but if you want to try and stop me, you're welcome to try." Barbara and Tim looked at the two in utter annoyance and confusion, since none of them had taken a Japanese language course for different reasons, and thus they were not able to understand the conversation. But it was obvious to the two that both the Hokage and Batman were studying each other very carefully, no doubt waiting for them to make one move that could change the whole situation in a heartbeat. That was when Barbara spoke. "Hey, not to butt in or anything, but how's it you got to me so fast and get me away from the crates?" Naruto grinned and moved over to the crates and moved some away, showing some of his strength, and to the surprise of the heroes, where Barbara was before, was a battered and cracked log. The blonde then replied to the question of the Reiki, as he knew that she was in need of an explanation. "I use a special jutsu to get you out of the way. It was a basic move that is basically thought to all ninja, and quite possibly familiar to your tall, dark, and brooding boss over there. I switched this log for you and got you out of the way, and you were there in my arms. I would have to be a seriously stupid doll to let a very strong and nice-looking lady being reduced into a pancake." Barbara could not help but raise an eyebrow as she could sense that the guy was flirting with her, and that was a bit surprising as the only one who did that was Dick. The former Robin, now Nightwing, was currently setting up shop outside of Gotham, and while they were still on very good terms with one another, it was a bit of a strain between their relationship that they were apart. "Okay, so what do you do with you?" "Well, way I see it, you three can either let me go since we're pretty much on the same side. Or you both can do things your boss's way since he plans to take me away for questioning, since he apparently has major trust issues towards the new people." Tim and Barbara looked at Bruce and he nodded. "We can't be too sure about his intentions or who he is." Barbara and Tim knew that Bruce did have a point and looked to face Naruto, who was already working on how to get away before the situation went down south. The two looked at him, and Batman was already getting ready on the off chance that Naruto did something. Naruto did something alright, but not in the way that the three expected, as he moved at amazing speed and yanked out his swords and jammed them into the ground. As he did so, he channeled his wind chakra and shouted out, "Futon, Racing Kaze." The attack unleashed a sphere of pure wind that catches the three off guard, as they were suddenly blasted by wind forces that were category 3 in strength. That forced them back a fair distance to the point they had to use their grappling ropes to hold on the supports. The dust and debris blinded them as Naruto finally spoke. "Sorry about that, but there's no freaking way that I am going to let myself get caught by anyone just yet. Bye." Naruto then aimed upward as he placed his swords away. The three only saw a glowing chain suddenly lash up, and soon the man left the area, as the wind died down. As soon as things seemed to calm down a bit more, they got away from where they all had anchored themselves, and soon moved to find any trace of the Hokage. but they were not able to find any trace of the man now. Batman wiped his eyes a bit and looked at the place where Naruto had been, and knew that they were going to be in for a very interesting time. It was here that the police came in, and that was the signal for him, Tim, and Barbara to move out of the area and get away from the regular police. They soon met with Commissioner Gordon, who was surprised to find out that someone else had come in on the scene, and from Batman's description, and that of Robin and Batgirl, he was quick to guess just who it was. The Hokage is here. Yes, but we lost sight of him, so I believe it would be best we be watchful then. He's not exactly the kind of person who one can ignore without good reason. Batman talked with Gordon more, and soon they were off to the Batcave, as he had a lot to talk about with the two. The way that Hokage fought was more than convincing to Batman that he was no simple kid, and was possibly a lot older than he looked. His memories of his encounters with Talia's father Ra's al Ghul told him that if there is something odd about someone, it usually was not too good. Once they got there, Tim took off his mask and spoke in a serious tone, though with some annoyance, as he rubbed his back from the sudden attack of wind. Man, what the heck was it he used on us? I felt like I got caught in a twister all of a sudden. Barbara nodded in agreement as she spoke next. Same here, could he have some sort of alien, like Kara and Clark, or is he a metahuman with wind manipulation powers? Bruce took off his cowl and shook his head a bit. No, as far as records show, most if not all metahumans don't have to do those things like jamming swords into the ground. I doubt that move was for show. And if he was a metahuman, then he would have to be very well trained at that. Government trained and sanctioned maybe. Bruce shook his head at Tim's suggestion, as despite the way things looked, the government would not allow that, plus the fact that the man spoke Japanese with some strange accent, told him that the US government was not part of it. Plus everything about the Hokage screamed ninja training, though the choice of orange in his ensemble as well as red, made Bruce even more curious. I doubt it, the government does not have a hand in this. Besides that, the weapons he carried were well made, with these being different. They don't sell this in novelty stores after all. These look better made and possibly handcrafted as well as sharpened. Bruce referred to the shuriken they had covered earlier as he took them for the dusting of prints. He needed to know if this guy was recorded in the national and international database, and soon. But he was surprised to find that there were no fingerprints, meaning that he was not going to get anywhere in that avenue. After some time in figuring out his plans on how to deal with the Hokage, he spent some time putting Barbara and Tim through some simulations, much to their chagrin. Thankfully, it was not too long as he gave them the chance to unwind and get some much-needed sleep. Tim was quick to head up and chat with Alfred, and get some food and drink before getting some shut-eye, while Barbara did the same before she would head home. After all, she did have life outside of being Batgirl. Bruce checked the news and saw that as clockwork, word of the Hokage's arrival was released to the public of Gotham and the rest of the world. There was no doubt in his mind that Clark was going to soon pay him a visit. After all, he had encountered the Hokage already, so some input from the Kryptonian was a must, if they were going to solve the mystery on who the Hokage was, and what were his plans and intentions. As for Naruto, he was currently getting himself ready for the chance to finally cross paths with Selena, and possibly have some fun while he was here. He made sure, however, to get as much shut-eye as he could, and also update his work, as he had gotten an email from his editor, that there were increasing demands for more of his work. Once that was out of the way after several hours, the blonde decided to go and grab some much-needed shut-eye for what was to come to him. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.